So let's talk about tampering here for a second. Jarrian Jones and potentially Fabian Lovett transferring from Mississippi State to Ole Miss. That is a rare thing, transferring from one rival to the next. You don't see it all that often. However, it's not completely unprecedented. I'm not going to try to fool you and pretend like a women's basketball transfer is the same thing as football, but you did have an Ole Miss women's basketball player transfer to Mississippi State. Ohio State and Michigan have seen a player transfer from one to the next. Actually, he was a Michigan player transferred to Ohio State, ended up beating Michigan every time in his career. You had most recently, this last season, Tavian Feaster, running back at Clemson, transfer to play at South Carolina. He ended up being Rico Dowdle's backup, but still a transfer from Clemson to South Carolina. This is uncommon, but not unprecedented. It is rare, but again, it's not unprecedented. Here's what you need to know about tampering. It is extremely common, and it is also very, very hard to enforce. So if that indeed happened here, it shouldn't surprise you at all. In fact, you should expect your players, no matter what school you're a fan of, if you're a fan of a major college athletic program, your players are getting tampered with. It is that common. It is extremely common, especially in times of coaching turnover or maybe NCAA trouble or scandal. It is extremely common. It's very hard to enforce. Again, it should not surprise you that this happens. In fact, you should expect that this kind of thing is happening to your players. I recently, on the weekday show, said something about A.J. Brown that had led to some very unpleasant things said about me on a handful of message boards around here. But my point in bringing that up was I know that it happened. I've talked to multiple people involved. I know that it happened. You'd be dumb not to do that. When all of this stuff was going on at Ole Miss, Mississippi State, through back channels or whatever, not contacting A.J. Brown would have been a stupid thing to do. Because that's how the game is played. I talked with multiple people over the weekend. Believe it or not, I do have some sources, and they are people that were involved in recruiting. I talked to a couple of former players at the Division I level, not here in Mississippi, and some media people, and they all shared the same sentiment that tampering is extremely common, happens all the time, it's hard to enforce. So, did that happen here in the case of these two players? I think I'd be lying to you if I said I didn't expect it. If I thought that it wasn't happening. Or that it didn't happen. I mean, both of these guys have former position coaches that are now on staff at Ole Miss. It's possible that it happened. I think you'd be crazy to expect otherwise. But as long as Ole Miss, if in fact they did do it, have their tracks covered, then it's really hard to enforce. That's why you never really see anybody getting punished for it, in spite of it being incredibly common, as I just mentioned. It is something that is talked about a lot. It is something that's screamed about a lot, but it doesn't really get anywhere because it's hard to enforce, it's hard to track, it's hard to trace, and players asking their friends on other teams to transfer to their school is not tampering. It's only tampering if a coach directs them to do that, which you hope that your coaching staff, depending on what school you root for, is smart enough to not do that, right? So it's really difficult to enforce. I understand the feeling, though. I really do. Mississippi State fans were upset over the last few days at the prospect of one of their players transferring to their rival school. I understand that feeling. I remember last NBA season when Anthony Davis was doing everything that he did, from doing the trade request months after he already told his teammates in training camp that he was going to request a trade mid-season. So imagine getting ready for your season and your best player saying, guys, I'm going to try to leave you at some point this year. So no wonder the team wasn't any good or didn't play well together, because their star is telling them he doesn't care anymore. Then he does the public trade request, and then there's that minutes restriction and the That's All Folks shirt and all that crap that he did, I still don't like him because of it. So I understand the feeling of anger that some of you have when one of your players transfers to your rival school. I certainly get it. But what I'm trying to tell you this morning, and I think this is the most measured take you're going to get on this, because you have two sides, and one of it is, oh, Ole Miss is tampering and cheating again and culture of corruption, and then you throw out the racism stuff and you do all that. And then the other people that say, oh, there's no way it happened and you're just being crazy. It's all a conspiracy. Well, no. The truth for most things lies somewhere in the middle. So that's why I'm kind of giving you a public service announcement this morning. It probably did happen. You should expect these kind of things to happen, especially with coaching turnover, and there's likely nothing that's going to come from it. That, I think, is the most measured and reasoned take on this situation. I understand why Mississippi State fans are frustrated. I would be too. I was. I'm wearing the shirt today. If you're watching on the stream, you can see my Pels shirt. I'm still frustrated with Anthony Davis, the way he handled that. So I feel you. But if you think something major is going to come from this, I guess it's possible that it does. There's a reason that you never see anybody getting punished for tampering. It's just really hard to enforce. So it's possible it happened, downright likely. The likelihood of something coming from this is probably very small.